Hey YouTube, what's up? My name is Will, and this is my new YouTube channel called Thinking Linguistically. I'm a linguist. That's my day job and what I'm trained to do. And one of the things you notice in linguistics is very often there will be sort of biological or, computational theories applied to language. Not that often that you see linguistic theories applied to other things, but I've been thinking about this stuff long enough that I think sometimes there's transfers. Interesting stuff. So my goal with this channel is to show you a little bit about how linguists approach problems, show you a little bit about how the sausage gets made, as it were, where academic research comes from, and I'm going to start it with this exploring some ideas that I'm not sure how to publish or how to write up yet, but that I think might go somewhere. What can you expect to find here? Well, interesting facts about languages of the world, about how sounds work, about how language structure works in the human mind, and how we can use the principles of understanding and analyzing linguistic data to come up with grammatical theories to try to solve some other kinds of problems. My idea with this channel is partly to show you, what a linguistic theory of other things might look like. And I think sometimes that will be interesting. So we're going to have a series of videos about some stuff I've been thinking about with time and communication channels and how to formally define complexity of information. And one of the interesting little things that I've been mulling about for a while is the difference between how humans solve problems and how natural evolutionary systems do. A good illustration of this is you can think about filters or valves or anything that's sort of meant to restrict flow. Now, if you ask a person to design a filter, probably they will come up with something like, a screen, right? You can strain out big stuff in either water or air by putting a network of little things that will catch that stuff. And then you made a filter. Making a filter. The basic way that the human solution to these problems works is by having something that stretches across. You could make that screen open and close, which gives you something like a valve, or you could just make it with holes in the middle and then you get something like a filter. The weird thing though is you actually have filters in your body for the air you breathe. And it doesn't work in that. Yeah, nature and biological systems tend not to solve problems in quite that way. So if you look at the filter that's inside of the human skull, the nasal concha, or concha, it's spelled like conch the shell, shaped like conch the shell too. Those work by basically spinning the air around. So these nasal concha are bits of bone inside of your skull, sort of right back there, that are spiral shaped. And one of the things about spirals is they increase surface area. The increasing of surface area allows all of the tissues along these spiral shaped passages to collect impurities from the air and thereby not be passed on to your lungs. This is a thing called a Tesla valve. It's a one-way check valve, so it allows water to flow in one direction but not in the other. Hi, this is Will here in post-production, realizing that this needs a little bit more explanation. So a Tesla valve doesn't have any moving parts, and it doesn't have an obstructed path from one end to the other. Instead, it has all these little baffles, as you can see in the design. Now, what those little extra loops do is create a sort of destructive interference, right? Liquid that flows in the one direction has to flow through those loops and ends up colliding back with the liquid flowing in the other direction, eventually grinding it to a halt. There's a great video on YouTube where you can see this in action using a flammable gas. I'll put the link in the description. Here I'll just show you the GIF. Now it's not a perfect example because this gas is light enough that it can flow in both directions, but you kind of see the point. The contours of the path with all of these baffles are such that the fluid moves slower and slower and slower until gradually, if it's long enough, it reaches a standstill. What's interesting to me is that this seems much more like the biological kind of solution for this problem than like the typical human solution, right? This is essentially a filter, but it's not the kind of filter that has like a mesh that obstructs the flow of fluid. Instead, it's got all these baffles. And what they do is change the fluid dynamics, kind of like the Tesla valve does, but in more than 2 dimensions. So we've got this situation where the normal valves that you use in your plumbing don't work in the way that like a a check valve developed by natural evolution does. We've developed a valve that works like that. We don't really use it much. That's not to say that it doesn't get used, that it's just an invention sitting on a shelf. Tesla valves are used in like small microscopic scale fluid interactions. And apparently some mobile phones are looking to use this for liquid cooling. Why I've been mulling this over is because I think there are certain situations where like we've gone off and come up with the sort of human style solution in ways that are oversights that miss the natural style solution. For instance, one of the things we're going to be doing is comparing language to other kinds of communication systems. And if you compare language to audio-visual communication, well, they don't work in the same way. And I think this is kind of a case of, the human design system has a structure that makes intuitive sense to the human designing it, whereas the linguistic system doesn't seem very intuitive, doesn't seem sensible because it's based on different mechanisms. It's working in a fundamentally different way. Part of what I want to do with this channel is to try to raise this kind of question, to sort of look for the alternative solution that maybe we haven't kind of considered before. So the point is that the way that a person designs a filter and the way that an evolutionary system design a filter are very different, right? The person comes with an obvious solution of, let me, impede the flow of these things that I'm trying to filter out. The natural solution does not start from that point, but instead sort of builds up to it in this roundabout way by using properties that are already part of the system. Long story short, I think that we've got the similar kind of situation if you compare language to other kinds of communicative systems. The way that we solve communicative problems in our artificially designed visual and auditory communication systems often are structured in a way that seems very different to how language as spoken organizes itself. I want to explore that. Thanks for joining us on this first video from Thinking Linguistically. And if this kind of stuff is interesting to you, you can like and subscribe. You can hit that bell icon. I hope you come along on this ride.